On Thursday last week, the 12th of March, Tim Cook published a letter called 50 Years of Thinking Different. On the same day, I was heading down into London to stand up in High Court against Apple, who filed an application to strike out my permission to pursue them for contempt of court, which has arisen directly from my alleged disability and discrimination and victimisation that's occurred within the UK Employment Tribunal. This goes back to discrimination and victimisation that I allege occurred back in 2024 when I was recruited for the role working on Persona, the next generation of Persona for Vision Pro and future Vision X devices. And I completed 10 interviews. I was told I was going to be getting an offer, a job offer, in the next 48 hours after a grueling, 10 interview process over 2 months plus. And I disclosed my disability situation in detail, talked about my disabilities, and I saw Apple as the company who I thought more than anyone would support me. And instead they didn't, they kicked me out. I'm not doing this for attention, but at the same time, I'm not going to stay silent while Apple can ruin the lives of people like myself, R&D engineers who want to build the future, an accessible and equal future that we thought Apple wanted too. And on the 50th anniversary, a PR piece comes out, another one of these fake open letters, about thinking differently, being a misfit, standing out. When actually, if you stand out too much, if you don't conform to the corporate machine, and you have disabilities that are considered, minor inconveniences, or, and you disclose them when you're about to be offered the job of your dreams, well, you're screwed. And to wake up today and see that this was published on Thursday when I was on the train, clinging on for dear life, with my mum sat next to me, taking all the medication that I have at my disposal to silence my noisy brain, to get there, to stand up for myself and stand up for my rights. And I see that there's a 50 years of thinking different letter, an open letter, from Mr. Cook himself. I can't let that go, I'm afraid. And I decided to make a statement. It's interesting the format of Tim's letter. It was an open letter. Apple also wrote an open letter to me in November. Granted, it was telling me that if I didn't drop the case against them, seeking permission to file for contempt, that they would pursue me for £42,350. That's now been upgraded to over £60,000, which is more than my means as a product of not working for 2 years, nearly 2 years. This isn't an angry rant, this is just me kind of letting you know, basically. When I see a letter like that online, and I see the date that it was published, and I know what I had to go through to get to court, as someone who doesn't leave my flat frequently as a product of what's happened, while I prepare for this storm, the storm that's already come over, because I was in court on Thursday, it worked. The application isn't being dismissed, but it's been stayed until October, until well after the Employment Tribunal, unless Apple try and delay it, obviously, which we're seeing signs of already. I made a few posts on my LinkedIn. For the first time ever, I went public about this to my professional network on LinkedIn on the 14th of January 2026, so just 2 months ago, just to tell people where I've been. There was a few people from my past career working in the visual effects industry, which I absolutely loved. I met some great people, and I worked on some awesome projects, awesome films for amazing directors, amazing studios, and produced some awesome simulation work with a great team of artists, technical directors, and engineers, and everyone else, who makes a team in the visual effects industry. And I went off to pursue my master's degree in computer science, with no other education, because I wanted to work in tech, the next generation of tech, the next generation of spatial computing, VR, graphics, and machine learning. But I will not do so in a way where equality and innovation do not align. And Apple, they can say all they want, they can post all the rainbow emojis they want. Tim Cook can post all these open letters he wants on the 50th anniversary. But Apple's equality and innovation do not align. I'm not someone who is looking for a shortcut. I'm not a misfit for being a misfit. I'm not an outcast for being an outcast. I'm a member of society. I'm a human being of this planet. And just because of the way that I was born, I'm at a disadvantage by default. That's not by choice. That's not my identity. That's just an emergent property of having 3 neurodevelopmental conditions. And I thought Apple would be the most inclusive, accessible, diverse company they claim to be, and I thought they would support me. But they didn't. Ultimately, the facts will be tested by the judicial system in the UK Employment Tribunal, and we will resume the High Court proceedings should there be a need, which there will be a need probably, looking at how things are going, in October. I have been filming my journey. I didn't want to have to make a video about it until I had something more concrete to show, because this has been a journey of hell, a journey that's robbed me of my autonomy that I was building, a life that I was building, and the chance to live that life through this amazing opportunity at Apple. And instead I've had to become a litigating person, a pro se claimant who is litigating by himself due to the extensive costs and complete inaccessibility to litigate against such a valuable, company where if you email barristers, there's no response. People don't want to support some crazy guy from North Yorkshire suing Apple. Who is this guy? He worked in the visual effects industry for a few years, so what? But here I am. I survived High Court, and I will survive the Employment Tribunal. And I'm not doing this for some sort of martyrdom. I'm not doing this as some sort of crusade. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to be building tech. I wanted to be building the next generation of R&D in the fields that I care about, to enable people to have crazy experiences that will have an impact on them, and to have technology that will make the world more accessible to people. Yet here I am, litigating in an adversarial process by design. And it's the only way that I can live with myself and not engage in the erasure that Apple has engaged in with me. This is not a perfect video. I'm not reading from a script. Luckily it's early in the morning, so my autistic ADHD brain is kind of in more early autistic mode than ADHD mode. I'm going to write an article that's a bit more substantive. I'm going to share openly the email that I sent Tim in March 2025, and I'm going to share openly the open cost letter that Apple threatened me with back in November. And finally, I will share the order that was submitted to me just on Friday evening from the High Court in London, showing that Apple's strikeout attempt has failed, and it has been stayed until after the Employment Tribunal, where there will be deep evidence dive and deep fact-finding into what the hell happened and did discrimination and victimization like I allege occur. I just wanted a life. That's all I wanted. I wanted to be one of those outcasts, those misfits that Tim talks about, and I wanted to be with other people like that, people who thought differently like me. But it seems that I think too differently for Apple. And when you think too differently for Apple, you're not on open letters from Tim Cook. You're kicked out. And you're pushed away. And if you try and stand up, you're erased. And that's what's happened to me.